When it comes to account-based marketing, it's really not a question of if you're doing it anymore, but how well are you doing it? See, there's this huge gap between just launching an ABM pilot and running a truly mature, high-impact program. So today, we're going to climb that ladder of ABM maturity and see what the view is really like from the top.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Is your ABM program actually delivering on what you hoped it would? I mean, the potential for incredible results is absolutely real, but for so many of us, there's this frustrating gap between that promise and the day-to-day reality.
And that's the strange part, right? It's a paradox. We know that ABM works. There's a reason it's become a cornerstone of B2B strategy, and that reason is pretty simple. When you nail it, it delivers a higher ROI than pretty much anything else you can do. So that brings us right to the heart of the issue, what we're calling the ABM maturity gap. Because even though almost everyone's adopted it, a huge number of programs just get stuck in the early stages, never really reaching their full potential.
Now, just look at this number for a second. It's kind of staggering, isn't it? Only 15% of organizations feel like their ABM efforts are well established. I mean, think about that. That means a whopping 85% of companies are still in the weeds, just figuring things out, stuck in what probably feels like a never-ending pilot phase. So what's holding everybody back? Well, the top 3 roadblocks are probably going to sound pretty familiar. First, not enough budget, which just starves programs before they can even prove their value. Second, a ton of confusion about the different ways to even deploy ABM, which leads to using the wrong strategy for the wrong accounts. And third, and this one's huge, a fundamental disagreement on what ABM even is. If no one's rowing in the same direction, you're not going anywhere. Any of those ring bell?
But here's the good news. We can learn a ton from that top 15%. And the very first thing that sets mature programs apart is having a rock-solid foundation. I'm talking about real strategic clarity with a deep commitment that comes from the very top. And wow, this slide just lays the disconnect bare. On one hand, we know that 84% of successful programs have strong executive support. But then you look at the reality. Only a third of companies actually have a formal written-down ABM charter to get everyone aligned. You just can't get real executive buy-in if there's no clear plan for them to buy into in the first place. Now, on the surface, this number looks pretty good. 57% of organizations have dedicated people for ABM. Awesome. But this actually hides a major talent gap. Because, it's not just about having bodies in seats. It's about having people with the strategic chops and the vision to actually lead a mature program. This quote from Helena Zhang over at Atlassian just hits the nail on the head. Maturity isn't about just following some playbook. It's about being visionary. It's about looking past what everyone else is doing and championing bold new ideas. That's what real strategic clarity looks like when you put it into practice. All right, let's move on to trait number 2. So once you've got that strategic commitment locked in, mature programs really separate themselves with incredibly disciplined design and execution. This is where the big picture strategy actually becomes reality. A really key structure we see here is something called a center of excellence, or a COE. You can think of it like the central nervous system for your entire ABM operation. It's the one place that standardizes best practices and makes sure everyone is perfectly aligned and consistent. But you guessed it, even with COEs, there is a maturity gap. This chart shows it perfectly. Right now, most COEs have pretty limited channel support. But look at the ambition. Everyone's planning to provide full-range support in the future. That tells you that organizations know they need way better orchestration to get to that next level. And this quote from Joel Jacob at Reltio is just a perfect little case study. Listen to this. They were stuck, totally stuck at a 1% conversion rate. The big breakthrough came when they completely shifted their thinking. They stopped targeting individual leads and started going after entire buying groups. That whole collection of decision makers and influencers involved in one deal. The impact was so massive, he says there's no scenario where they'd ever go back. That is a fundamental shift, not just in mechanics, but in mindset. And that brings us to our third and final trait, being relentlessly insight-driven. You see, mature programs don't just execute and hope for the best. They measure, they learn, and they optimize constantly, using technology as this incredibly powerful engine. And speaking of technology, let's talk about AI. I'm just going to throw a few numbers at you real quick. First up, AI adoption in ABM, a massive 91%. Okay, but is it actually working? You bet. 83% of those folks are reporting a positive ROI. And the impact? How does it feel?
A full 80% say AI has literally supercharged their programs. It's a total game changer. But, and this is a huge but, AI is not a silver bullet. This quote from Liza Adams is such a critical reminder that in B2B, trust is everything. The most mature programs, they get this. They use AI to enhance human connection, not to replace it. Okay, so let's recap. We've got our 3 core traits: strategic clarity, precise execution, and being insight-driven. Now let's get super practical and look at how these traits actually show up across the different ways you can do ABM. So first, just a quick refresher on the 4 main ways to deploy ABM. You've got your highly personalized, high-touch, one-to-one, and one-to-few models. Then there's the tech-powered one-to-many model, which is all about scale. And finally, deal-based ABM, which is like a surgical strike to help accelerate key deals that are already in the pipeline. So in those high-touch enterprise models, maturity isn't just about sending a personalized email. It's about being absolutely ruthless in your account selection. We're talking a rigorous data-driven process. It means having dedicated marketers who literally live and breathe just 3 to 8 accounts. The content isn't just customized, it's completely bespoke. And that collaboration with sales, it's not some weekly check-in. It's a deep, structured, daily partnership. It is the definition of quality over quantity. Okay, now let's flip to growth ABM. Here, maturity is all about sophistication at scale. This is not about blasting out emails. It's about using technology for dynamic account scoring that actually changes in real time as accounts show intent. It's about orchestrating this beautiful symphony of touches across every single channel, all automated. And you're not writing one-off content, you're building a whole system of modular content that can be personalized on the fly. And honestly, none of this works without a seamless, well-oiled connection to your marketing ops team, keeping that entire engine running smoothly. And here it is. This might be the ultimate sign of maturity. It's not about picking just one model. Nope. The most advanced, most sophisticated programs use a blended approach. A full 81% use 2 or more of these models at the same time, perfectly matching the right strategy to the right accounts. Look, getting to real ABM maturity is a journey. It's not a switch you can just flip overnight. It takes real time and real intention. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Of those 3 core traits we talked about, strategic clarity, precise execution, or insight-driven performance, which one does your program need to focus on next to take that next big step forward?